Do you have a car in the DC metro area? I do, and sometimes it can be a real bummer. But that's why there's Car Care to Go. Car Care to Go is the future of car maintenance and repair, and it's now as easy as ordering groceries online. They'll pick up your vehicle from your home or office and bring it back when the work is done. You can get your first synthetic oil change for $20.23 with the code FIRST20. Book now at carcaretogo.com.
Today on CityCast DC, 911 is no joke to Dave Statter. The longtime DC investigative reporter is the man behind some huge recent scoops on how the district's emergency call center has dropped the ball and what it could mean for you. It's Monday, February 13th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and this is CityCast DC. Dave Statter, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So the city's 911 call center, it's been in the news a lot. And I think in the history of 911 call centers, they're only in the news when the news is bad. There's a lot of jargon involved, but can you explain why should we be paying attention to this story?
I've been covering the 911 center and just 911 in DC for about 4 decades, first as a TV reporter, and more recently as maybe I guess you'd call an advocate journalist. And my concern is that they are not doing the job, that there are consistent systemic problems that have been around for years and haven't been addressed. And it was being noticed because I was uncovering where there were 911 mistakes, 11 of them in a little more than 3 years. And that's pretty significant. 6 of them under the current acting director who previously run DC 911 or the Office of Unified Communications for 5 years and was now trying to get the job back, serving as an acting director for a year. But most recently, her job did not pass council muster. The council said they didn't have the votes to confirm her, and the mayor eventually withdrew her nomination. Her name is Karima Holmes.
Wait, mistakes? What kind of mistakes? How did people wind up dead?
Every 911 center makes mistakes. The problem we see in DC is they make mistakes and don't seem to learn from them. The same ones seem to be happening over and over again. Things like delaying calls for various reasons, bad address, not noticing that a call needs to be dispatched, not paying attention to what the caller is saying, not reading the updated notes that are in the call. They even do things like not answer the emergency radio channels when DC Fire and EMS is calling and asking for help. I've documented that happening, probably getting close to 24 times.
All right, this is amazing stuff. Let me back you up and be wonky for just a second. The agency over all this, it's called the Office of Unified Communications, which at first blush seems like a propaganda agency or something, but it's but it actually oversees these things. Can you explain what this agency is supposed to do? What are its actual responsibilities? How do these calls work?
In the early days of 911 and through a couple decades, most police and fire departments ran their own separate 911 systems. In this case, and throughout the country mainly, they have Unified Communication Center, where they put all the police, fire, EMS, and here in DC, the 311 call center into one agency, which is the Office of Unified Communications. It was created about 17 years ago. Created, unfortunately, because of some stories I did, and Pat Collins at Channel 4 here in Washington, and the Washington Post did back in the late 80s and early 90s, showing problems with the old 911 system. What has disappointed me is that the system that they created did not make things better. It's been a problem since its inception, and it's just been getting gradually worse. And I would say that it's in crisis mode right now.
So if I'm calling about my car registration or something, it goes to the same agency as if I called about a heart attack.
Yeah, it's the same agency, a separate part of that agency. They don't mix the emergency and non-emergency calls, but it has the same director who runs both.
So you were part of the reports that blew up the old 911 system for being inadequate. They roll out a shiny new system. How did we get to this point?
Neglect. I don't think people understand what 911 is. I don't even think they understand what a unified communication center is. And this includes the council people. I think the biggest problem, the overall problem, is the successive councils and mayors through the years thought the answer to everything was technology. And they got them the latest technology and spent a lot of money on it. But they didn't focus on the people. They didn't focus on the training, good middle management, good upper management, and making sure you hire good people and pay them well. They don't pay them much. They need to pay them more. When we talk about first responders, These are the first responders. They're the ones that are going to answer your call first. I make the case that DC's Office of Unified Communication, or DC 911, is the public safety agency in the region that has more impact than any other on the health and well-being of the public in the Washington area.
So these conclusions you reached about the people, is that more or less where I know the DC auditor had a report that was pretty scathing. Is that more or less where that report wound up?
Pretty much, yeah. What the audit found is that the 911 call takers and dispatchers aren't using the technology that they should be using to help them do their job. For example, there was a call the other night for a crash on 14th Street Northwest. Unfortunately, it was sent to 14th Street Northeast. But if the call taker had bothered to look at their screen, they would have seen that Rapid SOS showed them that it was coming from Northeast, and they should have said, even if the person said to them it was Northwest, say, are you sure you're not in Northeast?
Do they actually give them any training about like the map of DC so that there's some things that any of us Washingtonians would know? Like if someone said, I'm on 99th Street Northeast, we'd know there isn't one. Do they give them the training like that?
They give them geography training, but it's been a sore point for years. I've been on this for a long time. And this issue of them not knowing the city, years ago, a half century ago, I took 911 calls in Prince George's County when I worked for the fire department in my youth. It seems like another lifetime ago. We didn't have computers then. It's a whole new ballgame. But the most important thing is we knew the area where we worked. We knew the roads. We learned them. It was part of the job. You needed to know the landmarks. You needed to know the exits on the interstate highways. My experience is many of them who take 911 calls and are dispatchers often do not know this information. So if you don't know where you are in DC, unfortunately, many of them who work there because they can't help you. And if you call 911, you're lost and they can't help you because they can't identify the landmarks you're describing to them. We've got a problem, and it delays getting help to that person. And it's happened many times where they've messed up on the geography and it's caused a delay getting help to someone.
Have you heard about the Dîner on War event that's sweeping across the globe? Dîner on War events are a members-only, fully curated, all-Black attire, 3-part dining experience held at a secret location in cities worldwide. Part fully immersive dining experience, part art and business networking opportunity, and part community fundraising event supporting 2 arts programs and a small business development nonprofit in each of the host cities, Dîner on War events are a fun, elegant, not to mention memorable way to support your community. Secure your membership today to join Den DC at a secret location in the nation's capital and experience this epic evening of opulent flair, gourmet cuisine, music, arts and culture, entrepreneurship, and community support. For more information, to secure your membership, or become a partnering sponsor or vendor, please visit www.dineronwar.com/DC. That's www.dinerennoir.com/DC. And enter coupon code HeyDC for 15% off your membership. They look forward to hosting you at Dîner on War, Washington, D.C., celebrating arts, business, and community.
FrameBridge, the custom framing company, is the perfect way to refresh your space for the new year by framing everything that matters to you. That's because they can FrameBridge just about anything. Game day jerseys, selfies, your anniversary dinner menu, artwork, your favorite movie poster, a love letter from the people at CityCast DC, anything. Here's how it works. You go to framebridge.com and upload a digital photo. If you have a physical piece to frame like a poster, they will send you complimentary packaging to safely mail it into their owned and operated studio where the framing will begin. You preview the piece online in dozens of frame styles. You choose your favorites. The experts at FrameBridge will custom frame your piece and deliver your finished piece directly to your door ready to hang. And instead of paying hundreds, their prices start at $39. You can order online at framebridge.com, or you can shop at a FrameBridge store near you, which if you live in DC means a whole bunch of stores. Get started today. Frame your photos or give someone the perfect gift. Go to framebridge.com and place your order now. Let's talk about one case. There was a particularly horrible case this past summer where 2 children died, apparently because of 911 issues. Can you walk us through what happened there?
Let me just correct you if you don't mind. I will never say that they died because of 911 issues, and that's a common mistake. You'll never be able to prove that somebody died because 911 was neglectful. we can say clearly there were mistakes surrounding both of these cases. One involved a newborn, just probably 2 days old, in Southeast Washington. The child was 7, Schatzman Chase, was in cardiac arrest early in the morning. Mother called 911, said, I live on Savannah Terrace Southeast. Instead, they sent DC Fire and EMS to Savannah Street around the corner. Luckily, and this happens many times, an ambulance crew, paramedics riding down the street from a further distance, saw the other address in the notes and went right toward that address, which lessened the delay a little bit. But they should have been there within a couple minutes. That didn't happen. They lost at least 2.5, 3, if not 4 minutes because of this mistake. And this child was in cardiac arrest.
So these are not the first mistakes you've reported on. Are there others that you know about that stand out to you?
Yeah, every one of them stands out because they seem to be mistakes that could have been prevented. The one, though, to me that is the most horrible involves a woman named Sheila Shepard. This was on June 5th of 2020. Her 13-year-old daughter called 911 to say her mom had collapsed. The call taker, to her credit, instructed this 13-year-old girl, Maria, to do CPR on her mom. And they told her help was on the way. They lived then at 414 Oglethorpe Street in Northeast. And that's the address the young girl gave them. Unfortunately, the dispatcher made a mistake and sent help to 414 Oglethorpe Street, Northwest. DC Fire and EMS get to the address in Northwest. The people there say they didn't call 911. DC 911 quickly realizes their mistakes, sends other units to Northeast, but a smart fire officer said, I'm already on the road. This was during COVID. My guys are already suited up. I'm really just 8 blocks away, even though the other unit technically is closer. And he went anyway and made sure his crew got there to try to make up for this delay. But it was too late. Sheila Shepard died. That's part one of the problem there. You know, they made a mistake. It does happen. People are fallible. But it's how DC handled that mistake. I learned of it within a couple days of this happening, within 2. And I reported that this and another case had occurred where DC 911 sent DC Fire and EMS to the wrong address. We didn't know why in my stories. I didn't have enough information at that point. And neither did the family. Later that year, a national publication called Communications Daily followed up on some of my reports and sent in FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. And somehow they got the 911 call through that, because normally they don't hand those things out, even with a FOIA request. But they got it. And when it was published, suddenly we got an answer. And we finally learned after 5 months, and the family finally learned, that that little girl didn't make the mistake, but 911 did. And I have to wonder, if you're the director of DC 911, how could you leave the family of this 13-year-old girl hanging for 5 months, not knowing for sure that she did right?
Oh, my God.
Unfortunately, after that 911 director, Karima Holmes, within 3 weeks announced she was leaving 911, left the city for a year while that audit was being done about her time there. The audit came back, a rather scathing audit, and the mayor decides to reappoint Karima Holmes. And to me, the most disqualifying thing of a list of things that I could give you about the 5 years she was in charge previously is the Shepard case. To me, it's as cruel as you can imagine to leave that family hanging. And Karima Holmes issued a public apology, but she never reached out to that family.
What steps has the city government, the DC government, taken to try to fix stuff?
Well, for a year, they had an interim director there when Karima Holmes left, and a woman named Cleo Sabito. And she had been working there and had worked in Washington State. And from what we could see, things started to improve. Radio channels were starting to be answered. There were a lot less mistakes, or fewer mistakes on addresses, a lot fewer duplicate calls where they send multiple units to the same address. It's a common problem with cell phones, that there's so many calls come in for one incident. So things started to improve. I thought they were on the right road, and there was a long way to go. The audit even said that they got great cooperation from Sabito, but that wasn't good enough for the mayor, and she didn't like what was going on for some reason and brought back Holmes. Now, on Holmes's return, there was a follow-up to the audit by the Office of the DC Auditor, and they said that all the recommendations that they had listed, there was very few, if any, that were being followed by Karima Holmes and her staff. And a lot of what Sabito had put in, Holmes changed and brought back her people and started changing things back.
So it has been a real struggle since her renomination was withdrawn to get a head for this department?
Well, they haven't had enough time yet, first, to do that. But the truth is, more than 2 years, they've been out without a permanent director, just an acting or interim director, first Sabito, and now we're going to be looking for another interim director and then try to do a national search for a permanent director. And it's going to be hard to get one.
Hey, so if you were in charge of the search, what qualities would you look for?
A 911 director who's run a big city agency. But I think there's more that's needed than just a director. There needs to be a look at 911 and understand why a series of directors who've come in since its inception have been unable to straighten that place out. And it has serious systemic problems that need to be addressed, and they're not being addressed. And I'm not sure that even bringing in a good, solid director with a good background who's done this for a long time in a big city environment, I'm not sure that they can fix it if the underlying problems aren't addressed. And I'm not sure what all of those are because I'm not on the inside.
Let me ask you a question. Say you are the one making the 911 call. Is there anything you can do to make sure things go more smoothly to avoid mistakes?
Absolutely. Know where you are is number one. You need to realize when you're driving down the street, drill yourself occasionally. What is this road I'm on in my commute every day? Do I really know it? Do I know a landmark along the Southwest Southeast Freeway or I-695, I-395 in DC, which is very confusing, even to fire EMS and police and 911? Do I know exactly where I am? Can I describe it to someone? That would be helpful. If you're walking on a trail in DC or biking down a trail in a park, notice the landmarks. If there are mile markers down, notice what they are. Anything that can help identify them and state clearly where you are. There have been people from bicycle groups and outdoor groups who have worked with 911 through the years to try to improve their areas being covered by 911. They've worked with OUC. Maybe it's helped a little bit, but still see those problems occurring.
So I'm curious, how did you wind up becoming the go-to reporter on this issue? What about it captured your interest?
Yeah, become the reporter of record, it seems. I was frustrated. Starting about 5 or 6 years ago when Holmes took over, it happened, and I thought it was a good thing. They fired the previous 911 director who wasn't doing the job. This is in 2015. They brought in Holmes January the year later, and I started watching very closely, and I would see problems occurring, and I would tell my reporter friends. They liked the stories, but nobody really understands 911, even in newsrooms. And we couldn't get it past the Washington Post, many of the TV stations and radio stations in those early years of me doing it. I finally said in October 2019, I got to step out of my role as just being a watcher, and I've got to start reporting on this because nobody else will. And the thing that probably really set me over the top was the August 2019 deaths of 2 people in a fire in Northwest Washington. It took 4 minutes and 1 second for DC 911 to dispatch the fire department to this call on a Sunday morning when nothing else was going on. And Karima Holmes told reporters and the council there's nothing wrong with 4-minute turnaround time on a call for the fire department or for a building fire with people trapped. She defended it, and I said, this is ridiculous. And I looked into it and found mistakes that were made and even found information that was withheld from the DC Council. So I started to write about it, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Hey, Dave, let me ask you, have you ever had to call 911 for yourself?
Many times. Not just for myself, but also seeing things in the district and elsewhere.
Are you worried that if they find out who you are, they might not send an ambulance?
I did have an incident in DC while I was doing this. And no, I think, look, let's put something on the record very clearly. The people who work at DC 911 don't go into their job each day saying, I'm going to make a mistake that makes the worst day for somebody even worse. They don't go into it. The problem they have, again, is not good training, not good management. They're not paid well, not good upper management, middle management, good standard operating procedures. All of those things are lacking. I don't blame the individual people that work there. And I think there are enough still good people, professionals who do their job there and try to do the best they can. They may not be equipped to do it, both from having the right policies and procedures or having the right bosses above them.
Dave Statter is a journalist and public safety advocate. Dave, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
And before you go, here's some quick news. DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser wants to consider putting more police officers in schools. If you recall, the DC Council had voted to phase out police presence 2 years ago, saying the officers create an unsupportive environment. But now Bowser and the council's chairman, Phil Mandelson, and several colleagues say the decision is making schools less safe. Meanwhile, labor organizers at Union Kitchen settled with their employer over the market's union-busting tactics last fall. The retailer must now pay $25,000 to 5 workers it fired or disciplined because they were involved in the union. And speaking of the foodie/labor beat, workers at 24 local farmers markets run by Fresh Farm have unionized. Their coalition includes the 25 workers who run the markets. It does not include the vendors. Also, the Hirshhorn Museum is launching an MTV reality show to find America's next top artist. The exhibit, Finding the Next Great Artist, will focus on 7 emerging modern artists from around the country. Sadly, no local artists made the cut. The winner will get $100,000 and an invite to exhibit their creations at the museum. Also, we are trying this new thing where we end our episodes with a quick DC life hack. This one comes from my co-host, Bridget Todd, who annually makes use of the free fire pits in Rock Creek Park. She says you don't even need to reserve them. Spring is almost upon us. Start planning your next bonfire party. And Bridget, I think my invitation must have got lost in the mail. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, tell everyone about it at your next bonfire party. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.